Gonzaga's 17-1 record is obviously fantastic, but their once strong strength of schedule has withered away. Thanks a lot, Alabama and Kentucky.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Tuesday, and welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Randy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Well, folks, Gonzaga is down again in the AP poll. They were up to number 7 a few weeks ago, are now down to number 9, thanks to an ugly week from their power conference opponents. We'll talk about that, plus where they've landed in the updated net rankings, what that means for Gonzaga going forward this season, what's still to come on their schedule. We'll also close out the show, talk about a nice win for the Zag women over the Portland Pilots on Saturday, where they're at right now in conference play as the season keeps rolling on here in mid-January. We start the show with an update on the AP Top 25. Of course, Gonzaga only played the one game last week at home against the Broncos of Santa Clara, got themselves a nice 12-point win in a game where they were struggling in the first half and then ended up with a 20-ish point lead before it got withered down to about 12 for the final score there. But still a nice result for Gonzaga. Unfortunately, it ends up dropping them one spot in the AP poll. I say it drops them. Really, it was Nebraska. Nebraska was at number 10. They stayed undefeated, picked up a win on the road against Indiana in Bloomington, 16-0 with wins over Illinois, with wins over Michigan State, with now a win at Indiana. It's pretty hard to deny that Nebraska deserves to keep moving up in the top 25. So I don't really have an issue with Nebraska being ahead of Gonzaga. Gonzaga only has the one loss, obviously, and I think their win equity is pretty similar to Nebraska, but Nebraska's undefeated. And frankly, Gonzaga's ahead of Vanderbilt, who is at number 10, who is also undefeated. As a little bit, I don't want to say surprising. I think, again, Gonzaga's resume is a bit better than Vanderbilt's, but you can't really fault a team that you can't really fault the AP voters for voting for a team that literally hasn't lost, that is 5-0 in a very good conference, for being ahead of Gonzaga at this point. The top 7, Arizona stays at number 1, Iowa State jumps to 2, and UConn jumps to 3, while Michigan falls to 4 after their loss at home to Wisconsin on Saturday. Purdue's next at 5, Duke is 6, Houston 7, Nebraska 8, Gonzaga 9, and then Vanderbilt again coming in at number 10 as one of 4 undefeated teams in college. There's 5 undefeated teams in college basketball. 4 of them are now in the top 10 between Arizona, Iowa State, Nebraska, and now Vanderbilt. And again, the Zags picked up that nice win over Santa Clara, a quad 2 win. We'll get more into that later in the show and what it means for Gonzaga when we talk about the net rankings. But part of the issue for Gonzaga, both from a net ranking perspective and for the perception of Gonzaga by the AP voters, is that the schedule that they put together, which looked so unbelievably excellent before the season, which really looked pretty good into the season as well, and even into conference play, has started to not look quite as good. A few of the teams that Gonzaga were hoping/expecting were going to be better this year haven't really delivered. And I think the easiest way to look at that, the easiest example, is that of the 9 power conference teams that Gonzaga has faced this year, their record this past week was 5-13. That's not good. That's not good for Gonzaga, that the teams that they played are not delivering as much in conference play as fans had hoped that they would. Notably, Alabama, which is pretty clearly Gonzaga's best win of the season, had a bad week. They lost at Vanderbilt. And again, Vanderbilt is undefeated. They're a top 10 team in the country. It was a road loss for Alabama. In a vacuum, a road loss to a top 10 team is never a bad thing, especially a conference foe. Like, you're not even really expected to win that game. So for Alabama, losing it, like normally you'd say losing at Vanderbilt is a disaster, but this year it's just not that big of a deal because Vanderbilt is that level of good so far on the season. But the expectation was that Nate Oates and the Crimson Tide would circle the wagons, get everybody back together, return to Tuscaloosa, and not let that kind of thing happen again. And instead, they go back home and lose to Texas. Texas is not a great team. They're okay. Sean Miller's a good coach, as much as Gonzaga fans don't really like him, and I get it. I'm with you on that. He is a good coach, and Texas is probably going to be a good team, but they haven't really been that good of a team yet this year. And Alabama lost at home. They scored 88 points. Their offense wasn't the problem. 88 points on 40% shooting from three, but they gave up 92 because Nate Oates teams just do not play defense, and that is a major issue for them. So this is a tough loss for Alabama. It hurts their perception. They fell in the AP poll 5 spots from number 13 to number 18. That is, again, Gonzaga's only win over a currently ranked opponent in the AP top 25. That stings. That hurts the perception of Gonzaga's non-conference schedule. Kentucky has not been good. We know that. They were not good when Gonzaga played them. Gonzaga beat the doors off of them in Nashville. Kentucky's had a few nice moments since then, but this last week was not good for them. They lost to Missouri. It was a really ugly loss for them. They are not in a good spot right now. It's hard to feel confident about them. They beat Mississippi State. Great. Mississippi State is probably the second worst team in the SEC. So not a major win, but at least they didn't lose that one. That's kind of more the deal for Kentucky is like, hey, they held on and got a W there. And then, of course, Michigan loses to Wisconsin. I don't think that Gonzaga, like some people will look at that and be like, oh, well, Michigan beat Gonzaga by 40 and lost to Wisconsin. Like those things happen 6 weeks apart from each other. Like I don't really believe in the transitive property for college basketball. I don't believe it really in any sport. I think it's just the circumstances are different every single game. So I don't know that game's dragging down Gonzaga's perception all that much, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help. If Michigan continued to beat everybody by 30, that would at least make the Gonzaga loss not look as bad. It stands out a little bit more each time that Michigan has a bad game. And then Creighton got smoked by St. John's. Oregon lost to Rutgers, which is just horrendous. Just not a good week. Not a good week for teams that played Gonzaga. It's unfortunate because this is a narrative that has obviously the narrative around Gonzaga's scheduling in general has always been bad because fans just cannot or casual college basketball fans cannot wrap their head around the fact that the WCC actually has some decent teams in it. And the fact that Gonzaga plays these really competitive non-conference schedules is done to boost up their quad 1 numbers and their quad 2 numbers. And it's unfortunate when those teams don't deliver because Gonzaga cannot control that. There is nothing they can do about the fact that UConn won back-to-back national championships and sucked last year, but yet still beat Gonzaga. There's nothing they can do about the fact that UCLA cannot play outside of the Western time zone. They just can't control that. There's nothing they can do about, other than not scheduling those teams, but the SEC was an all-time dominant league last year. So Gonzaga goes ahead and schedules three SEC teams this year in Alabama, who granted they didn't schedule, but it was ended up on their schedule. And then Oklahoma and Kentucky. And yet none of those teams have been as good as you hoped that they were going to be. It's just a tricky part of this world, of this college basketball landscape, that there's only so much Gonzaga can do. They're still going to be fine. We're talking about a team that's number 9 in the AP poll. Like they're the 9th best team in the country, according to the voters. They're the 6th best team in the country at the net. They're the 6th best team, according to KenPom. Like they are fine. Like this is not panic worthy. This isn't even really, it's more of just like eyebrow raising, like, oh, that's kind of unfortunate. Like it's really not that big of a deal, but it's something that's happening, something that we're seeing happen with this team right now, and something we want to continue to keep an eye on, especially if it starts to impact them in the net, which we will talk about more in the second segment. Gonzaga right now, one of 6 teams in college basketball that's in the top 15 in both adjusted offensive and adjusted defensive efficiency at KenPom. Usually I say top 10 in both. Gonzaga is not quite in the top 10 in both, but granted, there are only 2 teams that are in the top. Actually, just one. Sorry, 2. I swear I'll get it right. 2. Arizona and Michigan. Arizona's 4th in both adjusted offensive and defensive. Michigan is 7th in offense, 1st in defense, and then Iowa State's 12th and 2nd. Vanderbilt is 5th and 11th. Duke is 11th and 10th, and Gonzaga is 6th and 12th. So again, one of just 6 teams that's in the top 15 in both. So the Zags are fine. We're not alarmed. We're not concerned at this point. Just hoping that those teams that Gonzaga's already beat this year start to figure it out a little bit later. Like we said, Alabama's the only team Gonzaga has beaten this year that is in the top 25. They are now down to number 18, and nobody else even got a vote. Literally no other votes. Last week, Kentucky had 9 votes. Those 9 votes are gone after they lost at home to Missouri. UCLA had 2 votes last week. They lost to Wisconsin on the road. So they are now out of getting any votes. No votes for Creighton, for Oregon, for Arizona State, Oklahoma, etc. None of those teams deserve to be anywhere close to the top 25. So it's not a surprise they're not getting votes. The only other team that Gonzaga will play this year that got any votes is, of course, St. Mary's. They had 10 votes last week. That number was up to 17 votes this week. Despite actually falling at KenPom, they went from number 28 to number 35 because they had a win at home over Washington State, but it was only a 6-point win. They really labored against this Washington State team. It was kind of an ugly game for both teams down the stretch, but St. Mary's got the W. They've had a couple of close calls at home this year in conference play, needed a near buzzer beater in order to beat LMU at home, and needed to convert at the free throw line to beat Washington State down the stretch as well. So some ugly performances for St. Mary's, but they are still, I mean, they're 16-2 overall with a 1-point loss to Boise State in Idaho, and then a loss to currently undefeated Vanderbilt being the only blemishes on their resume. Don't think they'll end up getting into the top 25, even if they go undefeated between now and Gonzaga's matchup with them on the 31st of the month. But they'll be awfully close to the top 25 if they're still, if they haven't lost any games between now and then. Well, like we said, folks, we're going to talk net ranking here in the second segment. Zags at number 6 right now after that quad 2 win over Santa Clara. We're going to break it down, what it means for Gonzaga going forward, all that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, the new year is here, and it's the perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you're spending more time at home, you might as well love how it looks and feels. And that's why you should turn to Wayfair. It's a one-stop shop for getting your home back on track. From bedding and mattresses to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair makes it easy to start the year fresh. Wayfair has everything you need for a full home refresh all in one place. Whether it's updating your living room, organizing your space, or upgrading your work from home setup, Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find exactly what works for your style and for your budget. We're getting ready to do some painting, some redecorating in our house right now, and we're definitely going to need some of those furniture updates to go along with it. And I love that I could find pieces that matched our family's style without having to spend a fortune. Shopping is easy, delivery is smooth, and everything arrives exactly as expected. So get organized, refreshed, and back on track this new year for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, still part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're still talking about Gonzaga's resume and how they are perceived nationally here on this Tuesday edition of the show. We talked about the AP poll. Gonzaga went from 7 to 8 last week and now down one more spot from number 8 to number 9. Now we're going to talk about the net rankings. Last week at this time, and again, as a reminder, the net refreshes every single day. We only look at the net updates on a weekly basis, but last week at this time, Gonzaga was up to number 4, coming off that win over LMU. And now at this time, Gonzaga is down to number 6, even after picking up a quad 2 win over Santa Clara. Again, probably more so than the AP voting. Again, I think the AP voting results are likely more about moving Nebraska up than they are about moving Gonzaga down. But from a net perspective, Gonzaga's fall here is primarily because their strength of schedule is perceived to be weaker than it was a week ago. Because again, they added a quad 2 win to their resume over the last 7 days. Unfortunately, they have the same number of quad 2 wins because Oregon is now a quad 3 win. They're kind of pinballing right back and forth between that quad 2 and quad 3 line. So that's part of what hurt Gonzaga. And again, some of the other teams just fell a few spots. And again, I think the other teams just climbed. Gonzaga's at number 6 right now. Michigan, Arizona, Iowa State are all ahead of them. They were ahead of them last week. They still are, but now Duke and Purdue are also ahead of the Zags. And then Vandy, UConn, BYU, and Illinois round out the top 10. Gonzaga 17-1 overall. They're 3-1 in quad 1 wins, with Alabama, Kentucky, and UCLA being the wins. Michigan, of course, being the loss. 4-0 in quad 2. That's Oklahoma, Creighton, Arizona State, and now Santa Clara gets added to that quad 2 mix. 5-0 in quad 3 games. That'd be Maryland, San Diego, Seattle, LMU, and now Oregon, who is bordering between a quad 2 and a quad 3 win. And then they're 5-0 in quad 4 games. That's, of course, Texas Southern, Southern Utah, North Florida, Campbell, and Pepperdine. Looking at their schedule and kind of where those teams are at right now. Obviously, in the quad one, all 4 of those games were neutral site games for Gonzaga, meaning that to stay in the quad one conversation, those teams have to be top 50 in the net. Michigan's number 1. That didn't change even after their loss to Wisconsin. Bama is down 5 spots, but they're still number 17, so very safely in that quad one conversation. Kentucky's down again to number 35, so getting a little bit closer to that 50 spot where they would end up dropping to quad 2, but Kentucky, most of the games that they have left are quad 1, quad 2. So unless they go on a really prolonged losing streak or just start getting blown out, Kentucky's probably going to stay in that quad 1 territory. And then UCLA is the more concerning one. They're now down to 45 at the net. So that's where you start to get in the danger zone a little bit in terms of that game potentially dropping to being a quad 2 game. On the quad 2 side of things, Oklahoma's down 15 spots from where they were last week. They're 64th right now in the net. So that's not a great spot to be. They still hanging on to being a quad 2 game, but certainly a team to keep an eye on. Porter Moser's club just should have been better this year. Should have been better, and they just have not been able to figure it out yet. Creighton is up 4 spots from where they were last week. They're now 47th, which is squarely in the middle of being a quad 2 game for Gonzaga. And then Arizona State is now down to 91, but since that was a road game, they just have to be top 135 to remain quad 2. So they're safely in this spot. They used to be pretty close to being a quad 1 game. They're not that close to being a quad 1 game anymore. I think they're going to end up staying in that quad 2 territory, though. And then Santa Clara, 51st right now in the net. They need to be between 31 and 75 for that to remain a quad 2 game. So not really in any danger of falling out, but certainly not in a particularly likely situation where that ends up becoming a quad 1 game, especially since they don't have many opportunities to move up in the net by being in the WCC unless they beat St. Mary's or beat Gonzaga, which would not do us any good. Quad 3, Oregon is at 102 right now in the net ranking as I'm recording this on Monday afternoon. That is very close to being a quad 2 game, as in they just need to move up 2 spots and it would become a quad 2 game again. So I know many people are not Oregon fans. Why would you be an Oregon fan if you're also a Gonzaga fan? But right now, for the rest of the year, we're kind of Oregon fans. It'd be nice to have that be a quad 2 game. Like that would be an important metric on Gonzaga's resume if the Ducks could find a way to at least be good enough to be a quad 2 win for Gonzaga, because quad 3 just really doesn't help all that much. Maryland, San Diego, Seattle, and LMU are the other quad 3 games, none of them particularly close to moving into the quad 2 territory. Oregon's really the only one that is likely to do so. The other games are all pretty firmly in that quad 3 conversation, so I wouldn't expect any movement there. Similarly, on the quad 4 conversation, none of those teams are anywhere close. Like Campbell's the closest, and they're still 40 spots away from moving from quad 4 to quad 3. Just not significant in any way for any of those teams at this point. And looking ahead to the rest of Gonzaga's schedule, they still have 3 quad 1 games remaining, and they're all in conference play. In the regular season, I should say. They will obviously play at least 2 games, hopefully, in the WCC tournament. As it typically goes, Gonzaga finishes 1st or 2nd in the league. That means they get the bye all the way to the semifinals. They'll play a semifinal game, and then if they win that game, they'll, of course, play in the WCC championship. Should that happen, Gonzaga would likely be getting a quad 2 and a quad 1 game out of the WCC tournament. But even removing that from the conversation, of the 13 regular season games remaining, 3 of those 13 are quad 1. That is both games against St. Mary's and the road game against Santa Clara. Quad 2, they have 2 quad 2 games left, and I've said this every time, and I cannot tell you how big of a gift it is for Gonzaga that their quad 2 games remaining in this schedule are at Seattle at the Climate Pledge Arena, which is this Saturday, January 17th, and at San Francisco at the Chase Center. Because those are considered road games by the committee and by the metrics, those are quad 2 games. Neither of them are true road games in the sense that they are not being played on Seattle's campus at the Red Hawk Center, and they're not being played at the renovated War Memorial in San Francisco. They're being played on what are more or less neutral sites. And it's an advantage for Gonzaga, a big one, a big advantage for Gonzaga that those are going to be 2 neutral site, but actually road quad 2 games for the Zags. So you have 3 quad 1 games, 2 quad 2 games. So 5 of your 13 games remaining in the regular season are quad 1 or quad 2. 6 quad 3 games. That would be both games against Washington State, including this one on Thursday on the road. That would be your home game against San Francisco, your home game against Pacific, and your Oregon road trip taking on the Pilots at the Chiles Center and the Oregon State Beavers at Gill Coliseum. Your 2 quad 4 games are home games against Pepperdine and Portland. And like we said, likely one more quad 2 and quad 1 game coming in the WCC tournament as well. So lots of opportunities for Gonzaga. If they do what they should do the rest of the way, they should end up with 5 quad 1, ideally 6 quad 1 wins, even if you expect a split against St. Mary's. They could have as many as 7 if they win every game from here on out and things hold otherwise. That could be 7 quad 1 games, might end up being 6, as St. Mary's at home might drop to being a quad 2 game. But either way, Gonzaga is going to be in good shape here. The last couple of years, we've been agonizing over when Gonzaga is going to get their first quad 1 win or their second quad 1 win. And now we're in a position where it's mid-January and they already have 3 and are in a comfortable position to get 5 or 6 of those before the season's up. That's why we're talking about Gonzaga as a 2 seed or maybe a 3 seed, as opposed to talking about them as a 7, 8, 9 seed, or the scary conversations we've been having of, is this the year that they don't make the tournament? Those conversations are not happening. And even though Gonzaga's non-conference resume has dipped a little bit because of the strength of schedule, it's still in perfectly fine shape for the Zags going forward. Well, we're switching gears to close out the show, talking about Lisa Fortier and the Zag women's team, 4-1 in league play after a big win over rival Portland. Thanks again to a dominant performance from freshman Lauren Whittaker. We're going to talk about that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, there's nothing like college hoops season. The madness, the packed arenas, being right in the middle of all of the energy, the bands, the moments that you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that used to be the most frustrating part. You'd have long queues, you'd have issues with logging in, you'd have prices that jump at checkout. And that's why Game Time has given the advantage back to you, the fan. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing tickets in just a few taps. The app is super easy to use. You can go from browsing to buying tickets in just a few minutes. And the zone deals really stand out. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you can save even more money. Speaking of that game against Washington State, the game is on Thursday, the 15th of January. Tickets used to be $77 at the cheapest. As we've said before, prices go down the closer you get to tip-off. And right now you can get tickets in the Beasley Coliseum in Pullman against Gonzaga for just $69. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets by using Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we're closing out the show, giving you our weekly update here on Coach Lisa Fortier and the Gonzaga women's basketball team, who's now up to a 4-1 record to start conference play here, their final season in the WCC before moving on to the Pac-12. The Zags are now 12-6 on the year overall, again, 4-1 in conference play. That puts them in third place. They're 1 game back of Oregon State, and they are a half game back from Santa Clara. Oregon State remaining undefeated in conference play. Santa Clara has the edge over Gonzaga. But the Zags got a really nice win at home on Saturday. Very rare, for the record, for there to be the only Gonzaga game happening on a Saturday to be the women's team. So it was very fun to get a chance to watch this game without it happening to overlap with the men's game, which is always frustrating for fans who want to watch both games. The Zags picked up a 14-point W here. And if you were watching this game, sure didn't feel like that was going to happen, because Gonzaga went down 13-6 at the end of the first quarter. They scored 6 points in the first quarter of this game. They were down 6 at halftime, 28-22. If you told me at that time that Gonzaga won, I wasn't going to be shocked. But if you told me they picked up a 14-point win and scored 69 points, I truly would not have believed you. And if you told me this fact, which just still blows my mind that this is what happened, Gonzaga scored again 6 points in the first quarter. In the third quarter of this game, they scored 34 points in the third quarter compared to just 6 in the first quarter. That, you want to talk about halftime adjustments. You want to talk about figuring out what to do against a team and making that adjustment. Coach Fortier and the Zags, they pushed the right buttons in that halftime locker room to come out of their storm. I mean, they scored 12 more points than they did in the entire first half in just the third quarter alone. One of the most dominant quarters of basketball I have ever seen from a basketball team, period. Whether it's men's basketball for college, whether it's NBA, like that was a truly incredible, extraordinary performance from this team to get that done. We're going to talk good and bad from this game. The Zags dominated down low. They got it done at the stripe as well. 17 of 36 on 2-point shots, about 47%. They were 5 of 10 from three, which is obviously great. Anytime you can shoot 50% from three, but they didn't take a lot of them because they just pounded the ball down low and got to the stripe. 27 free throw attempts for the Lady Zags in this game. Only made 20 of them. It's 74%. I say only 74% for, again, if you're following the men's team, that's pretty darn good for them on the men's side. So you'll certainly take that. Just making 20 free throws in a game is tremendous. You always want to be able to do that. And for Gonzaga, they were efficient. They were getting down low at the rim, scoring around the cup, getting fouled, getting to the line, and converting from there as well. The Zags had 14 offensive rebounds in this game. Overall, out-rebounded the Pilots by 17, 37-20. Again, Portland had 20 total rebounds in this game. Gonzaga had 14 offensive rebounds alone, dominated in the paint, 32-24 advantage, scoring down there. They also had a 12-5 advantage in fast break points, which is a little surprising considering UP had twice as many steals as Gonzaga. Gonzaga did a great job of getting back in transition, preventing the Pilots from getting some of those easy points coming off of those live ball turnovers. The defense was good all night long in this one, even when they were down in the first quarter, even when they were down at halftime. They were doing a good job of making life difficult for the Pilots. UP shot just 4 of 19 from three in this one. That's 21%. While you can't give Gonzaga's defense too much credit for this, it certainly didn't hurt that the Pilots also shot a pretty ugly 7 of 16 from the free throw line in this one as well. And we got to talk about Lauren Whittaker because once again, Lauren Whittaker was phenomenal for the Zags in this one. 22 points on 8 of 14 shooting. She was 2 of 3 from the three-point line. She was a perfect 4 of 4 from the stripe, 10 rebounds, 2 steals in 26 minutes. She won the WCC Freshman of the Week award for the 7th time. I mean, you could just give her the Freshman of the Year award now, and there's not a single person on the planet who would argue against that. She is very clearly the best freshman in the conference. She is quite possibly the front runner, should be the front runner for WCC Player of the Year. At this point, she is now averaging 19.5 points, 10 rebounds, shooting 62.8% on 2-pointers, 37.5% from three, 83% from the free throw line. She leads the conference in points per game, field goal percentage, 2-point field goal percentage, and effective field goal percentage. She's second in rebounds, fourth in free throw percentage. She's had a double-double in 6 of her last 7 games, and the only other one in that stretch, she had 9 boards. There's not anything more to say about Lauren Whittaker. She's one of the most efficient low-post scorers I have ever seen play at Gonzaga, and that is including the Drew Timmies and the Domantas Sabonises of the world. She can step out and knock down the three-point shot. She's a great, great free throw shooter and very good at drawing contact. Really, really prolific player, considering this is her first year of college basketball. Zia Kuso had another great game. That's really nice for this team to see the St. Mary's transfer step up. There's been a big issue of not having a third player for this team. It's been the Lauren Whittaker and Allie Turner show all year long without a third piece able to step up. Akuso has now done that a couple of games in a row. She had 12 points, 2 assists, and a pair of rebounds in this one. She was 6 of 7 from the line. Really good job getting downhill and scoring at the rim. That's her strength. That's what she's good at. And it's nice to see her kind of opening up that part of her game and succeeding there. Turner had 10 points. She shot 2 of 4 from three, 4 of 4 from the line. Freshman Jaden Hale came off the bench. Another great game for her. 8 points, 8 boards, 4 of 5 shooting in just 23 minutes. And then Taylor Smith, starting power forward for this team, kind of their connecting big. She had 5 assists and just 1 turnover, continuing to be really good in that kind of Eliza Hollingsworth type role for this Gonzaga women's team. And part of the impressive thing for Taylor Smith's line is that 5 assists and 1 turnover is obviously great, but it was in a game where Gonzaga's not so good things include just continued horrific turnover issues for this team. The Zags had 13 assists in this game. They had 23 turnovers. 23 turnovers. 13 assists and 23 turnovers. If you take out Taylor Smith, this team would have 8 assists and 22 turnovers. That is absurd. It is a massive problem still for Gonzaga that started out early in the year. And it's like, okay, well, they'll probably clean this up as they get more familiar with each other. A lot of new faces, a lot of freshmen. It has not gotten better for this team. Inez Betancourt had 4 turnovers, 0 assists in 21 minutes as Gonzaga's starting guard. Lauren Whittaker had 3 turnovers, 0 assists. Jaden Hale had 3 turnovers, 1 assist. Zia Kuso had 3 turnovers, 2 assists. The only starter who had more assists than turnovers was Taylor Smith. And in fact, only 3 players had more assists than turnovers in this game. Smith was one of them. Taryn Gardner had 2 assists and 1 turnover. Cristobal Osorobo in 8 minutes had 1 assist and 0 turnovers. That's it. The Zags are now averaging 18.6 turnovers per game. That is 280th in college basketball. This is a significant issue for this team that, despite every effort from the coaching staff, it's one of the main things Lisa talks about after every single game in the press conference. This team is not getting better at taking care of the basketball. And unless they do, their ceiling is capped probably a lot sooner than people want it to be. Let's put it that way. The Zags are also not generating enough takeaways defensively. Their defense is fine, but it is not great. Case in point, they had just 5 steals and 2 blocks in this game. That's kind of about what they've been averaging, and their averages are bad. They're averaging 6.5 steals per game. That's 313th in college basketball. They're also only averaging 2.2 blocks per game. That's 301st in college basketball. Areas of concern for Gonzaga. They showed up in this game against the Pilots. Unfortunately, Gonzaga was good enough and Whittaker was good enough to get them a W, but those are things that are going to have to get cleaned up for this team to finish in the top 1 in the WCC, get much needed wins over Oregon State, and make a push to the NCAA tournament this year. Next up for Gonzaga is on Thursday. They host the Dons of San Francisco. This game is at 6 p.m. at the McCarthy Athletic Center on ESPN+. USF is 10-6 overall. They're 3-2 in the WCC. The Zags are the much better team, at least according to the net rankings, where the Zags currently sit at 68 in the net compared to 145 for the Dons. So we'll see if Gonzaga can keep the win streak going and pick up a nice one here over the Dons on Thursday. It's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Of course, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there as well. We'll be back with another fun show on Wednesday talking WCC hoops and how the season has gone so far around the league. And then, of course, on Thursday, we'll get you ready for that night's matchup on the road in Pullman against the Washington State Cougars. Thanks again, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And, of course, as always, go Zags.